Yeah, sure. So my name is Heidi Clark, and I am working for NASA in the spacesuit engineering group there. And I graduated with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Michigan State University and my master's in aeronautics and astronautics engineering from Purdue.
Wow, that's really impressive. So, what made you choose this specific career path?
Yeah, so it actually was not a straight career path. A lot of people that I work with who work at NASA really want to work for NASA as their dream job. So they kind of think about that their entire life. My situation was a little bit different, actually. So I started out interested in mechanical engineering in high school after I had gone to a woman in engineering program at Michigan Tech University. It was just a summer program that I attended that kind of sparked my interest in engineering. I then ended up joining my first robotics team in high school. And so I got to be on the build crew. And that was what sparked my interest in mechanical engineering. But from there, I didn't really have a particular interest right away in aerospace. I just was interested in robotics at the time and had that kind of spark of interest in mechanical engineering. And so then I kind of ended up navigating through an internship in the energy industry and two internships in the automotive industry when I was in my undergrad, and then ended up joining the NASA Pathways program, which is what kind of got me really interested in aerospace. So it was starting, I guess, sometime in undergrad that initial aerospace interest came into my mind. And then after multiple different internships, I ended up kind of pursuing that and applying to the NASA internship program. So, yeah.
That's really cool. So, was there a specific moment in your career that really inspired or motivated you?
It wasn't necessarily one thing. It's kind of just a combination of things over time, right? And walking through different internship experiences and really getting to see what I liked. Also, importantly, what I didn't like. So I had one internship where I did a lot of coding, for example. So I worked a lot in MATLAB and doing a lot of programming. And although I had a computer science minor in my bachelor's degree, I ended up realizing through that internship that I wouldn't want to program every day of my life. And that's just an example of one of many things that I learned while going through different internships and throughout my undergrad that I didn't want to do. And that kind of eventually led me into the place that I did want to go. The other things I think that helped kind of guide me into where I wanted to go were definitely working with mentors. So mentorship is really important, and connecting with someone in your field who has more experience than you and just learning about what does a future career path in this area look like. And based on that, that might help a person really decide what they're interested in or not. So for me, I had a mentor in one of my internships in the automotive industry who ended up being very influential in me kind of evaluating where I was at and deciding that wasn't something for me. And then kind of figuring out, well, what other interests do I have and where could I explore? What do I want to do instead? Right. So I think it's a combination of things. There wasn't necessarily one moment in time that my, entire plan changed or anything like that. It was kind of just over time and talking with different people and having different experiences.
Okay, I get that too because in my computer science class, I kind of realized that coding wasn't for me. And you kind of touched upon this already, but were there any specific people or mentors that made a significant impact on you?
Yeah, so like I was just mentioning, one of my mentors was in the automotive industry. I got close to him. He was very influential because starting out in my internship at that time, he really helped outline to me what would the career path at that company look like? What would I have to do to get there? And then once I got there, kind of what would be the steps in terms of my professional growth? What kind of projects would I be working on? What would my salary look like? What would my responsibilities be? So working with him, I really got to see that picture, and then staying connected with that mentor over the course of another year, I actually went back to that same company for a second internship. and stayed connected with that mentor that I had previously had. And I learned through interacting with him over time that just looking at what he was doing in his job and realizing he was kind of following that ideal career path that I myself was looking to maybe do. And after interacting with him over the course of that 2 summer span, those 2 internships, I started to realize that the work-life balance at that company wasn't what I was looking for, and I didn't have the same passion for automotive that I think other people in that industry did. And that mentorship really helped make me realize that, maybe I need to explore something outside of this company. And I had an interest in space at the time, and I really didn't expect it to become anything. I just kind of applied to the NASA internship program and was able to get in. And from that, really, once I actually got to NASA and started doing my internships, I realized that that is where my passion lied. And so that mentorship just kind of started out as a small thing, but ended up growing into my career path and really helping me make a big decision later on.
So when you entered this field, were there any struggles that made you reconsider your career choice?
I don't remember ever really reconsidering engineering. I think my path within engineering changed significantly from when I first selected to pursue a mechanical engineering degree versus to where I am now. I don't think there was ever really a point I reconsidered it. So I'll backtrack. Starting in high school and even before that, I had kind of always thought that I wanted to be in the medical industry. I thought that I wanted to maybe go into veterinary school or nursing. And it wasn't until probably halfway through high school that I realized I wasn't a fan of needles. I wasn't going to do well in the medical field. And from that, I really was pretty open to anything. I didn't have particularly anything in mind until I had attended that Women in Engineering camp. And so kind of after that point of going to that Women in Engineering summer camp and joining my first robotics team, and then eventually making that decision to pursue mechanical engineering, I didn't really turn back on engineering at all. I went into college thinking I wanted to pursue specifically robotics and robotic prosthetics and how they kind of connect to the neurological system for patients. So I kind of was thinking at the time I could combine my interest in the medical field with engineering and pursue some type of path that is kind of really a blend of, I guess, biomechanical or biomedical engineering and mechanical engineering. And so I started out there thinking that's what I wanted to do. My first internship in the energy industry was completely different than that idea. And that was just the opportunity that came along at that time. And then from there, I steered into the automotive industry because I had an interest at the time in autonomous vehicles. And then, like I mentioned, I eventually got to space. So I don't really think I ever turned back on my interest in engineering as a whole or mechanical engineering. I think that I kind of just veered a lot in the direction that I wanted to take that skill set.
So if any, what kind of adversaries have you faced because of your gender or background?
Yeah, so I personally don't feel like I've experienced a lot of adversaries, as you called it, because of my gender. I definitely know people who have. I think that there's definitely people who will give their opinion. I just tend to take that as more motivation than anything else. So I've definitely over the years gotten comments or just little statements made towards me that definitely could have been perceived as because of my gender, this person was making whatever comment it was. But the way that I've always liked to look at things, and I think this is just into my personality, is that, I like to prove people wrong. And so if people try to doubt me or try to kind of limit me based on what they see on the outside, I like to make that my personal motivation to then prove them wrong and do it anyway, if they know it or not. And so I don't really, there were definitely comments that were made along the way, but there wasn't any like serious adversary that I had throughout my path. It was kind of one-off things, and over time I've just brushed them off and I don't let them kind of get under my skin. So
Yeah, that's a great perspective. So what do you perceive to be the largest barrier to like female leadership or just girls entering like these male dominated fields?
that's a really good question. I think that depends. There's some barriers that can come from systemically just the situation that maybe you grow up in. But then I also think that, there can be kind of those quote unquote glass ceilings. And maybe those glass ceilings are more of a perceived glass ceiling and not necessarily a real glass ceiling. So in one of the companies I worked at, I felt that sense of a perceived glass ceiling where I can't necessarily outright say that there was a glass ceiling, right? But to me, at the time, looking up at the upper levels of leadership, there were not women at this company in leadership. And so to me, that felt like, well, okay, how could I get myself there, right? And so it was something that I was perceiving. It might not necessarily have been there, but I think part of that was just the history of that industry, if that makes sense. But ultimately, I think my personal outlook on kind of this entire topic is no matter your background, no matter if there is a glass ceiling or if you just perceive one, I think ultimately it all comes down to you as an individual. Whether you had a difficult situation growing up, that could be in many different ways, financially or in your household or in the neighborhood you grew up in, or who knows? Everyone has a unique situation. But no matter all of those things, I think at the end of the day, people have the opportunity to really work hard and to, over time, just push themselves. And if you work for it, you can accomplish it. That's kind of my perspective. So you can really achieve anything you set your mind to if you just put in the effort. And I think there's a saying, right, that it goes, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And so I like to think of that as a motto sometimes, I guess, where, despite your background or your situation or what you perceive or how your organization is structured, if you work hard and you try to stand out, I think there's an opportunity for everyone to grow and be a leader in the way that they want to be.
Yeah, that's really insightful. So why do you think diversity in a workplace is important and like in particular in the gender aspect?
I definitely think diversity is extremely important in the workplace. So from an engineering perspective, right, engineers are designing products typically that have to be applicable to everyone, right? So it doesn't matter what the person's gender is or what the person's background is, right? The products that engineers are making have to be used by everyone. So how do you create a product that's usable by everyone? Well, I think you need to have everyone's input into creating that product, right? And so that can vary across, every industry that there is, because engineers are basically involved in building everything out there. But I think that it's really important to have everyone's perspectives and everyone's ideas come to the table so that you're able to create products that work for everyone. And at NASA, that actually relates to the work that I do now. And I got to also take human factors classes at Purdue that kind of weave into this topic as well. Because at NASA, I'm working on the team that designs the spacesuit for launch and entry. And so that spacesuit has to be worn by the astronauts that NASA as an agency selects. And in order to accommodate the variety of different people that NASA could select, right, we have to be able to design a spacesuit that can fit people of all sizes and men and women and all kinds of different, body types and whatnot. And so I think that, as an engineer, you really have to have diversity at the table to get the perspectives and the ideas that you need in order to design something that will work for everyone.
Okay, so what initiatives do you think that people can take to promote gender equality?
Yeah, I think to prove gender equality, that kind of goes back to what I was talking before my kind of motto is just to work hard, right? So for me, I think, as a female in whatever STEM field you're in, it's best to just kind of put your best foot forward and always work hard and show what you can achieve. And I think as a whole, that contributes to, people's mindsets. If there are people who are kind of specifically doubting what a woman could do, and then they see a woman who's operating very successfully in their job, whatever that is, then I think that helps kind of curb that mindset a bit. So on an individual level, I think it's just even in the way that you work and perform your daily job and your daily tasks. But then on kind of an organizational level, right, I think that there's a lot of ways that organizations can help support a variety of different people in the workplace. So at NASA, there are groups called employee resource groups, and a lot of other companies have similar types of groups where people of different, I guess, identities or whatever will join different affinity groups. And so one of them at NASA is called WELL, and that entire group is focused on women in NASA that are all kind of getting together and just discussing things in the workplace and their, experiences. And sometimes it's just a social thing too. But there's definitely a lot of groups like that in organizations. And then even at the college level, there are organizations like that as well. So student organizations such as the Society of Women Engineers, and there are plenty of other women-focused groups at colleges that you can join to really kind of find that home if that's what you're looking for. So for me, that was the Society of Women Engineers. I joined when I was a freshman at Michigan State and participated all through graduation in that organization. And it was extremely influential in my career path. And I think that that organization as a whole kind of does just what you're saying. It helps kind of bring women together and, really just talk about different career opportunities and socially hang out. And they also have conferences where you can go and sit through all kinds of workshops, like almost anything you can really think of, and kind of just get a lot of new ideas. And it's very inspiring to be a part of some of these women-focused organizations that I personally have participated in for a long time. So I think that that also really helps from an organizational level, kind of fight that gender disparity or fight for gender equality.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I know that you kind of talked about how you don't let like comments get to you and how like you just focus on working hard, but how do you suggest people like cultivate those types of traits?
That's an interesting question. Because my perspective has always been that it's kind of inherent to who you are. But I think there's definitely ways, right, that you can also build that skill. And I think that it's kind of a muscle that you have to work, right? So I think having mentors is really important because mentors can show you ways and give you feedback that you didn't know you need that can help you improve and kind of help you grow into the skills that you need or improve upon the skills that you have. So I think mentorship really helps. And then also just, I think it's, like I said, building that muscle of being organized with yourself and having a schedule and just kind of that commitment of working hard, whether you're in college and you consistently go to study rooms or form study groups with friends in order to, complete your assignments. You don't have to be always the smartest person in the room, but if you surround yourself with the smartest people, you can get the answers that you need, you can grow. And I think that's kind of part of working hard and kind of gaining the skill set that you need to.
And just for like our final question, what advice would you give to other women or like specifically high schoolers who want to enter like your career field?
I think that my biggest advice outside of the things that I've talked about, right, is that you can be a planner. I'm a big planner. I want to plan everything really far in advance. When I was in high school, I wanted to know exactly what I was doing. I wanted to know exactly what degree I was going to get, what career I was going to have, how much I was going to make, all of those things. But you have to really allow yourself to be open to opportunities and allow your path to kind of weave and wind naturally as it's going to, and just kind of be open to that change. So I guess that piece of advice is don't feel like you have to really have all of those plans set and keep them set in stone over time. It's definitely okay for your plan to change. Now, I think it is good to have a plan. I think it's good to plan in advance and think about what your goals are and think about, what your dreams are, what you're passionate about. But I think ultimately, no matter what, your plan is going to change because you're going to get opportunities that you didn't expect to get. And so kind of allow those opportunities to guide you in your path and, take on those jobs that maybe initially don't sound super interesting to you, but you try them out. Maybe you'll love them. Maybe you'll hate them. If you hate them, that's fine. Now you can go to the next thing and know, I don't like this other thing. I'm going to stay away from that, but I tried it. And I think that that ultimately helps when you do find your passion. It helps you value it more, knowing the things that you experienced that you didn't like. So I think that my advice would be just to plan, but don't over plan, and be open to change and be open to new opportunities.
Okay, so just really to keep like an open mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the questions that like I have for today, and thank you so much for like meeting.